Yeah. What sort of Hi, Tasha.
Hi,
What
John.
sort of struggles did you what sort of struggles did you encounter trying to unify the Survivor series timelines of the Tomb Raider games and the original?
What's interesting is it struggle is probably the wrong word. It was a lot of fun to be able to take Lara from the Survivor series, which feels like a pretty complete arc for her emotionally, into the woman that I remember playing from the 90s. So it's this really fun kind of mashup of all the things that I have loved about the whole entire series since then. So it's really just it felt like a playground more than it felt like a struggle.
Hey, hi, Tasha. How's it
Hi,
going?
good. How are
Huge,
you?
good. Huge fan of the video games and the show. Like, why do you think Lara Croft is a huge inspiration to so many women?
Yeah, I mean, she definitely was for me. Growing up when I did, so in the 90s, there were very few women who were like her. We had Xena, we had her, Mulan, but even Mulan returns to her family and chooses not to be a badass. So there's something really powerful to showing women that you can be all the things that Lara Croft is. She's fiercely independent. She speaks her mind without fear of retribution. She can absolutely handle herself against anyone, physically, mentally. She has it all, but can also be, as we saw in the Survivor series, very vulnerable and have really in-depth relationships. So the fact that girls can see that they can have all of that is an extremely powerful message and probably why she's lasted this long and is, yeah, so iconic to so many.
Hi, Tasha. Justin from otakusgeeks.com.
Hi.
How you doing?
Yeah.
My question will be is this is obviously taking a lot of elements from inspiration from the recent video game trilogy. I like the fact that, and this is no spoilers, of course, but I like the fact that we're getting a more Laura's even now doing a little bit with more of kind of a examination on who she is. How important was that to take elements just from that, but just put your own spin on it and make her grow even more to the lore that we're soon going to be getting?
Yeah, it was important for me to start with a Lara who was still dealing with a lot, was kind of at her low point. Because I think to become the strong, fiercely independent woman that she became, she had to go through a lot of shit. As we see in the origin stories, I think the origin story is just the beginning of the trauma and the obstacles that she had to face to become that amazing of a badass, right? You don't just wake up that way. So that to me was really interesting to explore the psychology of that, the life she must have led, which must have been so incredible to lead to become a woman like that, with also like the bizarre connections that she has when she's Lara, like classic Lara, the fact that she knows random people from an era when she was like in the military or when she like spent a year in some temple in the middle of nowhere. Like, how did she make these relationships? Like, all of that fascinated me. Does that answer your question?
That's perfect because
Okay,
obviously we
great.
can't give nothing away.
What does animation allow you to explore or do compared to previous or previous adaptations of Tomb Raider?
Yeah, it's cool to be in animation for this version of the story because we get to jet set with Lara. And I feel like the world needed to feel big because that's how the video games feel and that's how her life feels. So it being an animation, just practically it's more affordable. We can go to the biggest places in the world and have the biggest set pieces, and it's not going to ruin Netflix, which is nice. So it allows us to have that really big sense that we have in the video games, while still having sort of the emotionality and the smallness that you can also achieve in this particularly the Survivor games. So it was awesome.
What I love about shows and video games is the score, the songs, and how do you choose like what music you want for the show, like how you chose your score?
Yeah, we worked with an amazing composer who did Ms. Marvel, um, and Pinar Toprak, and she was fantastic because we would just sit there and talk about emotions. We would sit there and talk about how we want the audience to feel. We would talk about what's in Lara's head at this moment. And the stuff that she would come back with was so cool because, yes, this is an adventure show, but you also need to feel what Lara's feeling. You need her POV, the same way we kind of did in the video games, right? I mean, the video game scores are pretty exceptional because they put you in a place. They give you a sense of her mental state as well. And so that was something that was a very conscious effort in the show, was to get into Lara's head while also giving you that same sort of epic feeling.
Definitely wanted to talk about the casting because there's one, I mean, they're all brilliant, but one is just fit like a glove. And Haley Atwell as Lara Croft, that when I finished watching, I was like, this was perfect. How did you approach the casting, and did you have any ideas of who you probably wanted or what voices would have fit this?
To be honest, Haley was sort of always my first choice. I've always been blown away by her performances. I think she, to me, embodied in everything I'd seen her in before, exactly who Lara Croft was in this moment and in time, coming from the Survivor series, moving into this person who's more funny, an Agent Carter. She's so funny, so classy, which Lara very much is. It's a very kind of unique space that I think Lara holds among heroes. And once you actually meet Haley and you start working with Haley, you realize that she actually is Lara Croft in her daily life. So it was really easy for her to say, like, do the stunts because she did that in real life just last week. Or it also was so fun to see her go from, and this is something very Lara, right, to go from extreme action moment on the edge of your seat to a really sort of dark, emotional, personal moment. And she's able to just ride that roller coaster in such a unique, nuanced way that, yeah, I agree. She was perfect for it.
What are the inspirations behind Richard Armitage's character as a sort of anti-Lara Croft?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That was definitely the intention. I wanted him to feel like a mentor figure for her, someone who was kind of charming her to the dark side and force her to make a choice. Do I want to go down that path or choose something else? And really wanted to find a villain who was experiencing a lot of the same things she was, who could, again, like hold a mirror up to her and force her to decide. So yeah, that was really the inspiration for Armitage.
What I love with the show, from what I saw with the show, is the fighting and action. It reminds me of playing the games. And how do you think the fans are gonna act when they see the show? You think they're gonna say, "Oh wow, this is just like the video games"?
Well, bless you for saying that it is. That's certainly the intention. How people will react, I can only hope they react that way, Rocco. I hope they do. I mean, that's definitely what we tried to capture. It's definitely what was very important to me, is to give you a sense of the gameplay and all the fun maneuvers, move sets that she used to have. It's so fun that, yeah, please have fun with it. I hope everyone has fun with it.
I also thought that this was like right after the third game because just the way the aesthetics and everything else was with the locations.
Yeah.
My other question will be in terms of story is what was the idea going into it? How did it come about that you were saying, you know what, this is more better to be told in an episodic format as opposed to maybe a live action or another form of medium?
Yeah, I mean, the story I have in my head of how Lara gets from Survivor era Lara to classical Lara takes a while. It's a huge difference between those two women. And so a TV show to me is going to be the best avenue to tell that story just because of the amount of time we have and the amount of obstacles we can throw at her over the course of every season. So that became very important. In terms of like choosing the story and the adventure, I really wanted to start Lara off again in her kind of low place, her low point in her life, and then see how she gets out of that. And the adventure chosen, trying to avoid spoilers here, is meant to challenge that exact part in her, is to come out of that darkness that we saw in Survivor series and into a new version of who you are, Lara. And so, yeah, that's kind of how the adventure was chosen. It was really about what does Lara need to deal with right now.
Were there any limits to what you could explore given there's a new game in development?
I actually expected to have this huge laundry list of things from Crystal Dynamics that we absolutely could not touch, and to have a very narrow lane I would have to stick in. And thankfully, that's not the case. We are exploring a really cool version of Lara and a very specific time period of Lara. And so long as we're being true to who she is, Crystal Dynamics is really supportive of what we're doing. And there's an occasional check-in of like, can we deal with this character, or is this off limits? And we would have some of those kinds of conversations. For the most part, it was really a lot of trust because they knew how much we were fans of the show, and they really believed in the vision we had for who she is in this time in her life.
How do you feel about the big fan base for Lara Croft? Because she has the fan base of both the films and the video games.
Yeah, absolutely. I count myself among them. So, I'm my own worst critic, and I really just wanted the show to make the fans happy, and to bring them the same kind of joy that I think we had been missing for so long, because we don't get as much Lara Croft as we all wish we did. I love the fans out there. I think they love her with a passion that is incredible to watch. So my only hope is that they approve of the show. It's a show for everyone. It really is. And like the biggest compliment too has been people who have said that their son or their daughter or their husband has picked up the game in watching this show, and like that's the best version, is to turn people into fans like us.
Tomb Raider is known for having a lot of lore and history, not just with actual Lara Croft, but actually, when it comes to just geography and in cultures. How did you know which culture that you wanted to explore? Where did you want the location to be in terms of storytelling?
That's a great question. I'm Chinese American, and so I actually come from sort of a background of being ashamed of being Chinese, which is very common amongst, I think, Asian Americans in general. And it wasn't until late in my life that I became very fascinated by Chinese history. I ended up studying it in college, and the depth of mythology there, and the depth of their sort of their worldview was just endlessly fascinating to me. And personally, I don't think we get enough of it. So I knew I wanted to explore that for that reason, but also, again, pairing Lara with the adventure that made the most sense for where she was as a character. A lot of the sort of worldview that she encounters in this season is exactly what she needs to hear. And so that to me also became kind of a no-brainer in terms of the adventure she should be set on for this season.